Welcome to our series in the names of God. This time we will be looking at part 2 in our little mini series on the name of God, Elyon, Most High God. I want to look at the prophet Habakkuk. Next time we'll wrap up our study of this name and maybe challenge ourselves with a why question. And that is, why should we trust his sovereignty? But looking at Habakkuk, he wrote about the coming captivity of Israel that was secured by the nation of Babylon, the Chaldeans. He referred to them as a terrible and dreadful people. This captivity would include plundering and violence. And what Habakkuk knew was awful enough, and yet God told him, you can't even fathom the way it's really going to be, what's really going to happen. So 3 times in chapter 1 in the New King James, Habakkuk used that why question. Basically, first of all, why would you use a super evil people, God, to capture people who are just rebellious people? You know, Israel's bad, but they're not nearly as bad as the Chaldeans. And then in verse 12, he says this question, are you not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, my Holy One? It's a reminder that Habakkuk is reminding himself of, but also it has this feel of reminding God. Aren't you, God, the one who does everything right? You ever thought about that? Have you ever challenged him in that way? And then in verse 13, he says, you are of purer eyes than to behold evil, and cannot look on wickedness. Why do you look on those who deal treacherously and hold your tongue when the wicked devours a person more righteous than he? I'll be honest. Have you ever asked God that question? Or at least thought that question? Habakkuk is questioning God's application of his sovereignty, his holiness. It's like, Lord, I know you hate this stuff. Why are you allowing it? I love how the next chapter begins. After this kind of questioning, we see in chapter 2, the very first verse, Job says, I will stand my watch and set myself on the rampart and watch to see what he will say to me and what I will answer when I am corrected. He expected it. You know, when I read that, I was reminded how in those times I've questioned God, I don't really question that he's right or wrong. You know, there's something inside of me that knows he's right. And I stand and I watch, and when I do that, when I sit and listen to him, I know my conclusion is not going to be, I know I'm right and God is wrong. And Habakkuk knows this. So Habakkuk's conclusion at the end of his book, after standing watch, still knowing God's people are about to be subjected to horrors, was surrender to God's sovereignty, acknowledgement that the mighty God does all things right. And so we have the glorious conclusion. Though the fig tree may not blossom, nor the fruit be on the vines, though the labor of the olive may fail, and the fields yield no food, though the flock may be cut off from the fold, and there will be no herd in the stalls, and we can all put our own fears in those verses, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. And we will look at this phrase, in the God of my salvation, next time we meet. And then he says, the Lord God is my strength. He will make my feet like deer's feet, and he will make me walk on high hills. Like Job and Habakkuk, we will end up declaring the same thing about our God, Elyon. He executes his sovereignty well. Our Elyon dwells in the most high places, and he's able to make us walk in strength in our high places, those places that we think are way too high for us. The next time we meet, we will hopefully pull all this together to a place where we are rejoicing in the God of our salvation.